one good spot to look for animal tracks is near water. There's a few reasons for that. One, usually areas near water have a lot of silt and mud, so tracks get stuck easier into the soil. Water attracts animals, not only animals who are thirsty, but also animals that like to eat fish or crayfish, or animals that like to eat the animals that eat those animals. Alright, so let's go take a closer look and see what we can find. Here we've got our first track. If you look very carefully, you can see this little shape of hands right here. Right here, and right here as well. And as you may or may not already know, that's from raccoons. Raccoons like to hang out by the water because they like to wash their hands before eating. It's supposed to help them be able to sense their food a little better. They also will reach in and half blindly just try to catch things with what they feel in their hands. So they'll use their hands as little sensors, and if they feel movement, they'll catch it. And this is the way they'll catch crayfish and shrimp, small fish even sometimes. So they really like to hang out in these quiet bodies of water because that's where all those little guys like to hang out. Here, just a little ways away, if you look very carefully, you'll see right here some foot pad prints. Now, just the fact that you see pads could mean either one of two things here in this area. Either something in the feline family or something in the canine family. Looking closely and seeing that they're pretty small pads, I'd say it has to either be a fox of some kind or a cat of some kind. The fact that there's no claw marks associated with each pad tells me that it's not a canine. If it were a canine, you'd see little indents where each claw digs into the ground. But since there isn't any, it tells me it has to be an animal with retractable claws. So, a cat. They're pretty small, so it could go either way, but given that I'm out far away from any residentials, I'd say that this has to be a bobcat. There's a small chance that it's house cat, but the chances of finding a house cat out here, far away from where anyone lives, it's pretty remote. Here we've got ourselves a nice, obvious trail of a raccoon, going right along the riverbank. Taking a look at the water every so often to see if he sees anything moving, then moving on, looking for a nice quick meal. And if we look closely over here, we can see that this is where he decided to set up camp for a while, looking for food. I say that because you look at this print here, it's walking that way, and then it's walking towards the water, and then you take a look at this print here, and it's walking away from the water, coming back, walking towards the water again, coming back, walking away from the water again. So here, he found a bit of food, he grabbed it, brought it back over to here, a little ways from the water, to eat it nice and calmly. Then he'd head out again, grab some more food, come back, and do it again. Over and over, I'd say maybe 3 times, 4 times here. Here's a nice example again of more raccoon tracks. This one's actually so clear that if you look closely, you'll see it's got little claw marks at the end of each finger. Take a look at this one too. Yeah, they've got pretty sharp claws. I would not want to mess with a raccoon. And again, walking up and down the riverbank looking for a good spot to get some fish. So here, if you follow me for just a second, we can find ourselves one of the more common large water birds. If you look right here in the center of the screen, you'll see what's commonly called a great egret. It's called an egret because it's white plumage, and it's called great because it's the largest bird that you'll normally see that is in the heron family with white plumage. Now he's staying very still right now because he doesn't want the fish or shrimp around him to know that he's even there. He's hoping that he'll blend right in with the trees, with the bushes, with any aquatic plants out here. What they'll do sometimes is, you probably won't see it now because he's walking, but what they'll sometimes do is they'll start swaying with the wind. Just swaying from side to side. And it's not that the wind is pushing them over, it's simply that they're trying to imitate the plants around them. When the wind blows, some of these water grasses will sway, so the egrets follow the grass, and trying not to stand out in a small fish's eyes. Very pretty animal. If you look really closely, it's hard to tell because he's so far away. But if you look really closely at those butt feathers right there in the back of the plumage, it's sticking out a bit. Now, it's early January right now, and so it's nesting season and mating season for a lot of these aquatic birds. As with peacocks and chickens and most birds, the males of this species are the ones that are most likely to have decorations during the mating season. So based on those feathers, we can tell that this is a young male. He probably hasn't found a mate just yet, but hopefully, if he's lucky, he will, and he'll have some kids this season. Alright, let's... So here we have a good example of a larger animal or a group of larger animals that commonly walk through this area. So if you guys look through here, I'll back up a little bit. We've got a lot of dead, tall grasses here. It's all pretty uniform, not much difference. But then you come to here, this spot right here, and you see a lot more green vegetation and a lot less dead grass. And if you look really closely, you can see that the dead grass has been patted down. And you see how it's going up and down vertical with the camera? That means an animal's been moving either this way or this way along the path. Now, I say that there might be a group of animals because if you follow this path to here, you see that this whole area has been disturbed. You know, you see a couple of paths coming through this way, a couple of paths coming from that direction through this way. So here we have a bit of an intersection where a few larger animals have been walking through. If I had to guess, I would say that these are probably hogs, just because hogs like to hang out in large groups. But it could also be deer. I'd have to take a closer look to see. Here we have another example where an otherwise unified, nice uniform field of grass is changed around this area in specific. So we take a closer look and we see this grass is pushed over to the side, and we look in here and we see a nice trail where an animal walked through. We'll walk this way, we'll follow it, and based on how visible this trail is, this animal or group of animals has used this trail often. So it walked this way, opened up this whole clearing here. It's very possible that maybe 2 or 3 animals were laying here. Maybe a couple of deer hanging out together, or a couple of hogs laid down over here as well. And again, we can tell this because the lack of grass here. So all this is full of grass, and then all of this isn't. There's no reason why this would be dead other than the animal trails that are coming in and out of here. So whatever animals are doing this, they're coming here pretty often. We've got more over here. So again, grass everywhere, and then a line of dead grass and pushed over grass. So let's walk through here, walk through here. Ooh, look, this is a nice spot to lay down. And it chooses this spot to lay. And it lays here for a while, maybe even a couple hours, taking a nap. Then it gets up and keeps going. So I've hit a patch that has a few different tracks on it. So what I'm thinking here is let's take a look at each one at a time and see what we can figure out. Here we've got a first track. You look nice and close. What does that look like to you? We've got a little thumb right here, a little pointer finger, a little middle finger, and a little ring finger, and finally a little pinky finger. So something with hands. Now we've got two animals out here with hands, but the ones with hands that look the most like ours would be raccoon. So we've got at least one raccoon paw here, and if we follow it along, we've got another one there. We can see where it walked right across this dried riverbed. Next, we've got some scat right here. Yeah, I know, it looks like a pile of berries, but berries don't just pile up randomly. This is undigested scat from an animal. It's hard to say because of the decomposition, but based on the fact that it was berries, I'd guess again that it's a raccoon. He seems to have eaten a lot of berries, but it was probably a raccoon because they're the ones that like to eat the most berries around here. If I were in a different area, I'd maybe suggest a bear that had some stomach issues, but it's probably not likely. Not here in this part of Florida. Moving down a little bit, we see what appears to be tracks, but they're not fingers like the other ones. So let's look closely here. If you look here, we've got two toes, two hooves. The points are on this side, so it was walking in this direction. They're nice and oval with a nice little point at the edge. So this tells me it was probably a deer that walked around here. Maybe coming to see if there was any tender leaves from these water plants in the area. Now if we go to here, it's not conclusive, but if I had to take a guess, I'd say that a hog passed by and stuck his nostril in there, and in there, looking for nice tender roots. You see these tubules here? They like to look for these and eat them. A good source of starch and carbohydrates. Now I say hog and not armadillo for one reason being these holes are a lot bigger. And also look at all the destruction that happened around it as well. An armadillo would focus in one spot, move on, focus on another spot, move on, focus on another spot. But this guy, he just pushed up the dirt over there, pushed it over there, pushed all this dirt to the side, dug with his foot a little bit. It seems like he found what he was looking for because there's a lot of leftovers here as well. Now, like I said before, there's a lot of different animals that like to hang out in these cypress swamps. Some of them are on the ground, some of them are in the water, and some of them are in the trees. Let's take a quick look at this guy. So if we follow this tree here, it forks. You're going to take a right at the fork, and you're going to reach another fork. At that fork, you're going to make a left, and you're going to follow the main truck all the way to the middle of the screen. You see that movement there? That right there is a pileated woodpecker. Probably the prettiest woodpecker we have out here, and by far the biggest. You hear that knocking? That's an easy way to tell them apart from just any old bird. They've got a red crest on the top of their head. You see what he's doing right now? A little hard to tell because he's a little far away. But he's picking, knocking at the tree branch. And when he breaks a little piece off, he pulls at it with his mouth and he lets it fall below. And what he's doing is he's trying to dig around looking for bugs to eat. They also make nests in the trees. However, this one is definitely not making a nest based on the way how he's digging through, stopping, picking at something, stopping again. And also just the fact that he's picking at that branch there that looks relatively dead. If he were trying to make a nest, he'd be using a wider trunk. Alright, very nice. These guys are very pretty. So, as you've seen here so far today, yeah, you can find a lot of animal tracks here near water. Specifically, you'll find a lot of raccoon and a lot of larger animal tracks like hog and deer. I mentioned it a little bit before, but deer, they'll come near the water to take a drink, but also because a lot of these water plants are very tender and very soft, so they're very nice to nibble on compared to the harsher grasses out in the plains. Hogs still like to hang out near water because the soil is so much softer. When they're digging through it, it's easier to find those little tubules that they like to eat and other starchy roots in there. Raccoons, obviously, they like to eat the fish and the crayfish. And of course, occasionally you'll find other animals tracks out here too. But if you're lucky, you'll find otter tracks, maybe even find alligator bedding like the one we saw before. But for the most part, you'll find a lot of raccoon and a lot of large mammals.